name is Miriam Salim with the Runner's Mechanic Physical Therapy Clinic, and tonight I wanted to talk to you about shoe wear. There are a couple different things you can do to look at shoe wear and help decide if the shoes are right for you. If you've ever been to a shoe store, you've probably seen there's a plethora of shoes out there, and it's difficult to know which ones are correct for you. When you look at shoes, you no longer have to worry if the shape of the shoe should fit the shape of your foot. There used to be a way of looking at your arch height and saying that a certain arch height was only for a certain shoe. We now have a better paradigm where we call it the comfort filter. There's some research that shows that the shoe that feels best on you may actually be the shoe that lets you move more naturally in the way that you run. So that's a nice thing now, is that when you try on several pairs of shoes, if you do feel some that are very nice and they feel right for you, they may very well be the right shoe for you. I'm going to show you a couple of different tests to help show you the different properties of a shoe. I really think it's always best to go to a local shoe store and let one of the knowledgeable salespeople there help talk to you about shoes and what dimensions the shoes are actually in, so you have the best information about your shoes. One test you can do is called a break test. I brought some different shoes here tonight. There's a spectrum of shoes going from a more minimalist shoe, which is usually a shoe that has a thinner sole and is more flexible, to a stiffer shoe that has more motion control. And now we have almost a separate category of a shoe that has a lot of outsole to it, called a maximalist shoe. And this does make it difficult sometimes to figure out what is right for you. We'll look at shoes, how you tell a shoe's stiffness. Okay, I think that's a really nice way to see what kind of shoe is best for you. Here I have my son's shoe. This is a Merrell Bare Access. I like to keep kids that aren't having any kind of injury or dealing with any kind of foot pain in shoes that are light and shoes that help them move. So one thing you can do with the break test is you put your hand here on the heel and the other hand on the toe, and you compress the shoe. And you want to see how that shoe breaks. This shoe is a lot more flexible, it's a little bit more minimalist, and so as we start to compress the shoe, we really can compress the entire shoe, not only through the ball of the foot, but also through the arch, so we can just ball it up easily, okay? All right, we can differ this with, this is a trail shoe, so we see a little bit more tread here. When I do the break test on this shoe, we really just see the break right there at the ball of the foot, okay? And this is usually where you want to see the break of a shoe. All right. If somebody is dealing with, let's say, plantar foot pain, and particularly maybe some plantar fasciitis or arch pain, having a shoe that breaks in the middle like this may not be the best fit for them. They may prefer something that has some stiffness so they don't have a lot of motion as they get better with their arch pain, okay? Some people have pain in the metatarsal area. So let's say you have like a metatarsalgia and the ball of the foot is very sensitive. You can actually even look at a shoe that's even stiffer. Okay, so here we have a shoe, and as I compress through here, we even get even less motion through the ball of the foot. Okay, so you can see how you can look at the different ways a shoe is stiff. You can also look at what's called a twist test. So you can take a shoe and you can actually add torque through it to have it rotate right or left. Okay, so you can see I can easily compress the shoe both into right and left rotation. This also lets me know how much stiffness is in the heel counter. All right, once again, sometimes dealing with somebody that has, is either an adolescent runner or a very light runner, and they really like the feel of having their feet move when they run, this might be a good shoe for them. If someone is slowly moving into doing some more minimalist work, maybe they're doing some low miles with a more minimalist shoe, this might be something they want to use. All right. But if we have a heel counter that has a lot of wiggle to it, sometimes people with heel pain or Achilles pain, they don't feel the best in a shoe like that because it's allowing too much motion, all right? So somebody with Achilles or heel pain may prefer a shoe that has some stiffness to it, okay? So you can see as we turn these shoes, we have some stiffness there of the heel counter, all right? Another aspect of shoes is the width of the toe box. Okay, so how wide is that toe box? Again, this is really great when you talk to some of your shoe store reps. They can tell you the dimensions of the toe box. So if you've had an issue, let's say Morton's neuroma, or a nerve sensitivity in the ball of the foot, or you start to get numbness and tingling in your toes when you put on your shoe, that toe box may be too narrow. There's lots of shoes nowadays that are actually marketing a much wider toe box, and so we have some good alternatives for that. A nice thing also to know is that you can also look at ramp differential. And all ramp differential is the difference from the height of the heel when you measure from the outsole to the insole, from the heel to the ball of the foot. So what is the difference in the height here of the heel to the height of the ball of the foot? Okay, so on something, sometimes you can get the more minimalist shoes, and if they have no difference, so say we have 10 millimeters of sole here in the back and 10 millimeters of sole here in the front, that is a zero drop. So that might be a term that you hear a lot, is a zero drop shoe. Some people do very well in a zero drop shoe. When people have a lot of tightness in their calves and heel cords and Achilles, sometimes they do better in a shoe that actually has a little bit of a ramp differential. That means that the heel is a little bit higher than the height of the ball of the foot. So they can place a little bit less stress through their Achilles. So that's one aspect of shoes to look for. It's a ramp differential. And again, that's a nice question to ask your shoe salesman about what is the ramp differential. You've probably noticed you've had a shoe maybe in the past and you've gone back to buy the same model and it's completely changed. That's another thing that's great to get in touch with your shoe reps to see what is going on with the shoe this year. What changes have they made? Sometimes they're good and sometimes you can't work around it and you have to switch shoes, and sometimes that can be frustrating. It's always good, I think, to have one or two different kinds of shoes on hand to rotate in parallel. There's a little bit of research behind that. I also brought a work shoe, so you can think about the shoes that you have during your work day. This is a very flexible, almost kind of ballerina flat that Marilyn makes. Okay, so obviously a lot less stability here in this shoe. Okay, and then you can have a work shoe, like I'll bring one here. A work shoe here that has a little bit more stiffness to it. Okay. So depending on what you're doing during the day, if you're having issues in certain shoes when you run, make sure that you take the same characteristics of your running shoes and try to implement those in your work shoes. Maybe you don't do well with a narrow toe box in your running shoes. Make sure you have a nice wide toe box in your work shoes. Okay. So if there's any questions you have, feel free, you can email me, runnersmechanic@gmail.com, or check out my website. But I hope this little introduction to how to look at shoe stiffness is helpful. Have a great night.